Hey guys. That was weird. I don't know why my OBS wasn't letting me go online, but at least we solved it. How are you guys doing tonight? That's good. That's good. You guys ready to find out what else happens to our quintet? I guess that's what you would call it. Just gonna let a few more people gather in if they want to. So what did you guys do today? Oh yeah, your mouse was doing some funky stuff, wasn't it? It's fun. Beefy stuff is always good. Well, thank you, Glecko. Gletcho. It's probably Glecko, huh? Alright. Yeah. A lot of people said that they've enjoyed my voice, so I figured this was the best avenue I can go down with it. But yeah, last time we had Dorothy being swept up in the cyclone, and surprisingly didn't die from it. And then she met her other 3 friends: the Scarecrow, the Tin Men, and the Cowardly Lion. And Dorothy wants to get back to Kansas for some reason, but I think it's just because she misses her aunt and uncle. I don't know why anyone would want to live in Kansas. No offense to any Kansasians. Kansasians? Kansanians. But I suppose, you know, there's no place like home. episode just left off with Dorothy having angrily dumped water onto the witch because she stole her shoe. You know, what better story is there of women fighting over shoes? That makes for very interesting entertainment in the sense of storytelling, anyway. It's a very interesting story. There's like no explanation of anything that's happening. It's just there's a stork that carries the scarecrow back from the river. The Tin Woodman continued using an axe that severed his limbs and his head and his entire body in twain. But he's going to keep using the axe, so... Oh, thanks for the follow there, Mamamuter. And Junigatsu. But I think we can get started. I think that's everyone that's going to be here for now. But either way, I appreciate you all for joining me tonight. I'll probably go for a little while longer, because I spent 15 minutes trying to figure out why I wasn't going live. But either way, let me switch gears here. Alright, is everyone ready? Everyone snuggled up in their comfort, or their chair, or their bed? Excellent. Take a bit of a sip of tea. Chapter 15. The Discovery of Oz the Terrible. The four travelers walked up to the great gate of the Emerald City and rang the bell. After ringing several times, it was opened by the same guardian of the gates they had met before. "What? Are you back again?" he asked in surprise. "Do you not see us?" answered the Scarecrow. "But I thought you had gone to visit the Wicked Witch of the West." "We did visit her," said the Scarecrow. "And she let you go again?" asked the man in wonder. "She could not help it, for she is melted," explained the Scarecrow. "Melted? Well, that is good news indeed," said the man. "Who melted her?" "It was Dorothy," said the lion gravely. "Good gracious," exclaimed the man, and he bowed very low indeed before her. Then he led them into the little room and locked the spectacles from the great box on all their eyes, just as he had done before. Afterward, they passed on through the gate into the Emerald City. When the people heard from the great guardian of the gates that Dorothy had melted the Wicked Witch of the West, they all gathered around the travelers and followed them in a great crowd to the Palace of Oz. The soldier with the green whiskers was still on guard before the door, but he let them in at once, and they were again met by a beautiful green girl who showed them each to their old rooms at once, so they might rest until the great Oz was ready to receive them. The soldier had the news carried straight to Oz that Dorothy and the other travelers had come back again after destroying the Wicked Witch, but Oz made no reply. They thought the Great Wizard would send for them at once, but he did not. They had no word from him the next day, nor the next, nor the next. The waiting was tiresome and wearing, and at last they grew vexed that Oz should treat them in so poor a fashion after sending them to undergo hardships and slavery. So the Scarecrow at last asked the Green Girl to take another message to Oz, saying if he did not let them in to see him at once, they would call the winged monkeys to help them and find out whether he kept his promises or not. When the wizard was given this message, he was so frightened that he sent word for them to come to the throne room at 4 minutes after 9 o'clock the next morning. He had once met the winged monkeys in the land of the West, and he did not wish to meet them again. The 4 travelers passed a sleepless night, each thinking of the gift Oz had promised to bestow on them. Dorothy fell asleep only once, and then she dreamed she was in Kansas, where Aunt Em was telling her how glad she was to have the little girl home again. Promptly at 9 o'clock the next morning, the green-whiskered soldier came to them, and 4 minutes later they all went to the throne room of the Great Oz. Of course, each one of them expected to see the wizard in the shape he had taken before, and all were greatly surprised when they looked about and saw no one in the room at all. They kept close to the door and closer to one another, for the stillness of the empty room was more dreadful than any of the forms they had seen Oz take. Presently, they heard a solemn voice. It seemed to come from somewhere near the top of the great dome, and it said, "I am Oz, the great and terrible. Why do you seek me?" They looked again in every part of the room, and then, seeing no one, Dorothy asked, "Where are you?" "I am everywhere," answered the voice, "but to the eyes of common mortals I am invisible. I will now seat myself upon my throne, that you may converse with me." Indeed, the voice seemed to just then to come straight from the throne itself, so they walked toward it and stood in a row, while Dorothy said, "We have come to claim our promise, O Oz." "What promise?" asked Oz. "You promised to send me back to Kansas when the Wicked Witch was destroyed," said the girl. "And you promised to give me brains," said the Scarecrow. "And you promised to give me a heart," said the Tin Woodman. "And you promised to give me courage," said the Cowardly Lion. "Is the Wicked Witch really destroyed?" asked the voice, and Dorothy thought it trembled a little. "Yes," she answered. "I melted her with a bucket of water." "Dear me," said the voice. "How sudden. Well, come to me tomorrow, for I must have time to think it over." "You've had plenty of time already," said the Tin Woodman angrily. "We shan't wait another day longer," said the Scarecrow. "You must keep your promises to us," exclaimed Dorothy. The lion thought it might be as well to frighten the wizard, so he gave a large, loud roar, which was so fierce and dreadful that Toto jumped away from him in alarm and tipped over the screen that stood in the corner. As it fell with a crash, they looked that way, and the next moment all of them were filled with wonder, for they saw, standing in just the spot of the screen had hidden, a little old man with a bald head and a wrinkled face, who seemed to be as much surprised as they were. The Tin Woodman, raising his axe, rushed toward the little man and cried out, "Who are you?" "I am Oz, the great and terrible," said the little man in a trembling voice. "But don't strike me, please don't. I'll do anything you want me to." Our friends looked at him with surprise and dismay. "I thought that Oz was a great head," said Dorothy. "And I thought Oz was a lovely lady," said the Scarecrow. "And I thought Oz was a terrible beast," said the Tin Woodman. "And I thought Oz was a ball of fire," exclaimed the lion. "No, you're all wrong," said the little man meekly. "I have been making believe." "Making believe?" cried Dorothy. "Are you not a great wizard?" "Hush, my dear," he said. "Don't speak so loud, or you will be overheard, and I should be ruined. I'm supposed to be a great wizard." "And you aren't?" she asked. "Not a bit of it, my dear. I'm just a common man." "You're more than that," said the Scarecrow in a grieved tone. "You're a humbug." "Exactly so," declared the little man, rubbing his hands together as if it pleased him. "I am a humbug." "But this is terrible," said the Tin Woodman. "How shall I ever get my heart?" "Or I my courage?" asked the Lion. "Or my brains?" wailed the Scarecrow, wiping tears from his eyes with his coat sleeve. "My dear friends," said Oz, I pray you not to speak of these little things. Think of me and the terrible trouble I'm in at being found out." "Doesn't anyone else know you're a humbug?" asked Dorothy. "No one knows but you four, and myself," replied Oz. "I have fooled everyone so long that I thought I should never be found out. It was a great mistake, my ever letting you into the throne room. Usually I will not even see my subjects, and so they believe I am something terrible." "But I don't understand," said Dorothy in bewilderment. "How is it that you appear to me as a great head?" "That is one of my tricks," answered Oz. "Step this way, please, and I will tell you all about it." He led the way to a small chamber in the rear of the throne room, and they all followed him. He pointed to one corner, in which lay the great head, made out of many thicknesses of paper, and with carefully painted face. "This I hung from the ceiling by a wire," said Oz. "I stood behind the screen and pulled a thread to make the eyes move and the mouth open." "But what about the voice?" she inquired. "Oh, I am a ventriloquist," said the little man. "I can throw the sound of my voice wherever I wish, so that you thought it was coming out of the head. Here are the other things I used to deceive you." He showed the Scarecrow the dress and the mask he had worn when he seemed to be the lovely lady. And the Tin Woodman saw this terrible beast was nothing but a lot of skins sewn together, with slats to keep their sides out. As for the ball of fire, the false wizard had hung that also from the ceiling. It was really a ball of cotton, but when oil was poured upon it, the ball burned fiercely. "Really," said the Scarecrow, "you ought to be ashamed of yourself for being such a humbug." "I am. I certainly am," answered the little man sorrowfully. "But it was the only thing I could do. Sit down, please. There are plenty of chairs, and I will tell you my story." So they sat down and listened, while he told the following tale. "I was born in Omaha." "Why, that isn't very far from Kansas," cried Dorothy. "No, but it's farther from here," he said, shaking his head at her sadly. "When I grew up, I became a ventriloquist, and at that I was very well trained by a great master. I can imitate any kind of bird or beast." Here he mewed so like a kitten that Toto perked up his ears and looked everywhere to see where she was. "After a time," continued Oz, I tired of that, and became a balloonist." "What's that?" asked Dorothy. "A man who goes up in a balloon on circus day, so as to draw a crowd of people together and get them to pay to see the circus," he explained. "Oh," she said, "I know." "Well, one day I went up in the balloon, and the ropes got twisted so that I couldn't come down again. It went way up above the clouds, so far that a current of air struck it and carried it many, many miles away. For a day and a night I traveled through the air, and on the morning of the second day I awoke and found the balloon floating over a strange and beautiful country. It came down gradually, and I was not hurt a bit, but I found myself in the midst of a strange people who, seeing me come from the clouds, thought I was a great wizard. Of course I let them think so, because they were afraid of me, and promised to do anything I wished them to. Just to amuse myself and keep the good people busy, I ordered them to build the city and my palace, and they did it all willingly and well. Then I thought, as the country was so green and beautiful, I would call it the Emerald City, and to take the name fit better, I put home greens. And to make the name fit better, I put green spectacles on all the people, so that everything they saw was green." "But isn't everything green here?" asked Dorothy. "No more than in any other city," replied Oz. "But when you wear green spectacles, why, of course everything you see looks green to you. The Emerald City was built a great many years ago, for I was a young man when the balloon brought me here, and I am a very old man now. But my people have worn green glasses on their eyes for so long that most of them think it really is an Emerald City. And it certainly is a beautiful place. It's abounding in jewels and precious metals, and every good thing that is needed to make one happy. I have been good to the people, and they like me. But ever since this palace was built, I have shut myself up and would not see any of them. One of my greatest fears was the witches, for while I had no magical powers at all, I soon found out that the witches were really able to do wonderful things. There were 4 of them in this country, and they ruled the people who live in the north and south and east and west. Fortunately, the witches of the north and south were good, and I knew they would do me no harm. But the witches of the east and west were terribly wicked, and had they not thought I was more powerful than they themselves, they would surely have destroyed me. As it was, I lived in deadly fear of them for many years, so you can imagine how pleased I was when I heard your house had fallen on the Wicked Witch of the East. When you came to me, I was willing to promise anything if you would only do away with the other witch. But now that you have melted her, I am ashamed to say that I cannot keep my promises. I think you are a very bad man, said Dorothy. Oh no, my dear, I am really a very good man, but I'm a very bad wizard, I must admit. Can't you give me some brains? Asked the Scarecrow. You don't need them. You are learning something every day. A baby has brains, but it doesn't know much. Experience is the only thing that brings knowledge, and the longer you are on Earth, the more experience you are sure to get. That may all be true, said the Scarecrow, but I shall be very unhappy unless you give me brains. The false wizard looked at him carefully. Well, he said with a sigh, I'm not much of a magician, as I said, but if you will come to me tomorrow morning, I will stuff your head with brains. I cannot tell you how to use them, however. You must find that out for yourself. Oh, thank you, cried the Scarecrow. I'll find a way to use them, never fear. But how about my courage? Asked the Lion anxiously. You have plenty of courage, I am sure, answered Oz. All you need is confidence in yourself. There is no living thing that is not afraid when it faces danger. The true courage is in facing danger when you are afraid, and that kind of courage you have in plenty. Perhaps I have, but I'm scared just the same, said the Lion. I shall really be very unhappy unless you give me the sort of courage that makes one forget he is afraid. Very well. I will give you that sort of courage tomorrow, replied Oz. How about my heart? Asked the Tin Woodman. Why, as for that, answered Oz, I think you are wrong to want a heart. It makes people most unhappy. If you only knew it, you are in luck not to have a heart. That must be a matter of opinion, said the Tin Woodman. For my part, I will bear all the unhappiness without a murmur, if you will give me a heart. Very well, answered Oz meekly. Come to me tomorrow, and you shall have a heart. I have played Wizard Foss for so many years that I may as well continue the part a little longer. And now, said Dorothy, how am I to get back to Kansas? We shall have to think about that, replied the little man. Give me 2 or 3 days to consider the matter, and I'll try to find a way to carry you over the desert. In the meantime, you shall be treated as my guests, and while you live in the palace, my people will wait upon you and obey your slightest wish. There is only one thing I ask in return for my help, such as it is. You must keep my secret, and tell no one that I am a humbug. They agreed to say nothing of what they had learned, and went back to their rooms in high spirits. Even Dorothy had hoped that the great and terrible humbug, as she called him, would find a way to send her back to Kansas. And if he did, she was willing to forgive him everything. So, what do you think the wizard is going to do for them? Thank you for following Milton ASMR. I hope you enjoy your stay. Oz is just a scared little man. Who would have thought? It's hard to determine how many days go past by with all these happenings. Would like to know what they do between the days that they wait to see Oz and such. Give us some backstory, L. Frank Baum. Come on, man. Let us continue. Chapter 16. The Magic Art of the Great Humbug. Next morning, the Scarecrow said to his friends, "Congratulate me. I am going to Oz to get my brains at last. When I return, I shall be as other men are." "I have always liked you as you were," said Dorothy simply. "It is kind of you to like a scarecrow," he replied. "But surely you will think more of me when you hear the splendid thoughts my new brain is going to turn out." Then he said goodbye to them in a cheerful voice and went to the throne room, where he rapped upon the door. "Come in," said Oz. The Scarecrow went in and found the little man sitting down by a window, engaged in deep thought. "I have come for my brains," remarked the Scarecrow, a little uneasily. "Oh yes, sit down in that chair, please," replied Oz. "You must excuse me for taking your head off, but I shall have to do it in order to put your brains in their proper place." "That's all right," said the Scarecrow. "You are quite welcome to take my head off, as long as it will be a better one once you put it on again." So the wizard unfastened his head and emptied out the straw. Then he entered the back room and took up a measure of bran. I was about to say brain. Which he mixed a great many pins and needles. Having shaken them together thoroughly, he filled the top of the Scarecrow's head with a mixture with the mixture and stuffed the rest of the space with straw to hold it in place. When he fastened the Scarecrow's head on his body again, he said to him, "Hereafter you will be a great man, for I have given you a lot of brand new brains." He's a pun man too, I see. The Scarecrow was both pleased and proud at the fulfillment of his greatest wish, and having thanked Oz warmly, he went back to his friends. Dorothy looked at him curiously. His head was quite bulged out at the top with brains. "How do you feel?" she asked. "I feel wise indeed," he answered earnestly. "When I get used to my brains, I shall know everything." "Why are those needles and pins sticking out of your head?" asked the Tin Woodman. "That is proof that he is sharp," remarked the Lion. "Well, I must go to Oz and get my heart," said the Woodman. So he walked to the throne room and knocked at the door. "Come in," called Oz, and the Woodman entered and said, "I have come for my heart." "Very well," answered the little man, "but I shall have to cut a hole in your breast, so I can put a heart in the right place. I hope it won't hurt you." "Oh no," answered the Woodman, "I shall not feel it at all." So Oz brought a pair of tinsmith's shears and cut a small square hole in the left side of the Tin Woodman's breast. Then, going to a chest of drawers, he took out a pretty heart made entirely of silk and stuffed with sawdust. "Isn't it a beauty?" he asked. "It is indeed," replied the Woodman, who was greatly pleased. "But is it a kind heart?" "Oh, very," answered Oz. He put the heart in the Woodman's breast and then replaced the square of tin, soldering it neatly together where it had been cut. "There," said he. "Now you have a heart that any man might be proud of. I'm sorry I had to put a patch on your breast, but it really couldn't be helped. "Never mind the patch," exclaimed the happy woodman. I am very grateful to you, and shall never forget your kindness." "Don't speak of it," replied Oz. Then the Tin Woodman went back to his friends, who wished him every joy on account of his good fortune. The Lion now walked to the throne room and knocked at the door. "Come in," said Oz. "I have come for my courage," announced the Lion, entering the room. "Very well," answered the little man. "I will get it for you." He went to the cupboard and reached up to a high shelf and took down a square green bottle, the contents of which he poured into a green gold dish, beautifully carved. Placing this before the Cowardly Lion, who sniffed at it as if he did not like it, the wizard said, "Drink." "What is it?" asked the Lion. "Well," answered Oz, if it were inside you, it would be courage. You know, of course, that courage is always inside one. So that this really cannot be called courage until you have swallowed it. Therefore, I advise you to drink it as soon as possible." The Lion hesitated no longer, but drank till the dish was empty. "How do you feel now?" asked Oz. "Full of courage," replied the Lion, who went joyfully back to his friends to tell them of his good fortune. Oz, left to himself, smiled to think of this success in giving the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman and the Lion exactly what they thought they wanted. "How can I help being a humbug," he said, "when all these people make me do things that everybody knows can't be done?" It was easy to make the Scarecrow and the Lion and the Tin Woodman happy, because they imagined I could do anything, but it will take more than imagination to carry Dorothy back to Kansas, and I'm sure I don't know how it can be done. Oh, hey guys. You didn't miss very much. Basically, they all rushed down the Wizard of Oz and told him to give them their gifts that he promised, because he didn't expect them to destroy the Wicked Witch of the West. So he stalled. And basically, they found out that he was just a little old man, and a humbug, as they say. So, in order to fulfill the Scarecrow's wish, he put a bunch of pins and needles in the top of his head. For the Tin Woodman, he placed a sewn silk heart shape into his left breast. And the Lion, I assume it was water. So, you know, claiming that these were brains, a heart, and courage, of course. But, you know, they already had these qualities, obviously, so being the humbug that he is, basically gave them what they thought they wanted. He is a humbug. How are you guys doing tonight? Dorothy speedrun. Back to Kansas, please. Oh, Fish Bingo. Oh man. Good old Toontown games, huh? Do the Mario pausing and like jump. Well, it's good to see you guys. Thank you for joining. We are 73% through the book at the moment. I'm gonna have to jump on the next book rather immediately. Didn't expect to finish it this quickly. But I guess 4 hours of nothing but reading is gets you through a book pretty quickly. All right. Chapter 17. How the balloon was launched. For 3 days, Dorothy heard nothing from Oz. These were sad days for the little girl, although her friends were all quite happy and contented. The Scarecrow told them that there were wonderful thoughts in his head, but he would not say what they were because he knew no one could understand them but himself. When the Tin Woodman walked about, he felt his heart rattling around in his breast, and he told Dorothy he had discovered it to be a kinder and more tender heart than the one he had owned when he was made of flesh. The Lion declared he was afraid of nothing on earth, and would gladly face an army or a dozen of the fierce Kaladas. Thus each of the little party was satisfied except Dorothy, who longed more than ever to get back to Kansas. On the 4th day, to her great joy, Oz sent for her, and when she entered the throne room, he greeted her pleasantly. "Sit down, my dear. I think I have found a way to get you out of this country." "And back to Kansas?" she asked eagerly. "Well, I am not sure about Kansas," said Oz, "for I haven't the faintest notion which way it lies. But the first thing to do is to cross the desert, and then it should be easy for you to find your way home." "How can I cross the desert?" she inquired. "Well, I'll tell you what I think," said the little man. "You see, when I came to this country, it was in a balloon. You also came through the air, being carried by a cyclone, so I believe the best way to get across the desert will be through the air. Now, it is quite beyond my powers to make a cyclone, but I've been thinking the matter over, and I believe I can make a balloon." "How?" asked Dorothy. "A balloon," said Oz, "is made of silk, which is coated with glue to keep the gas in. I have plenty of silk in the palace, so it will be no trouble to make the balloon. But in all the country, there is no gas to fill the balloon with to make it float." "If it won't float," remarked Dorothy, "it will be of no use to us." "True," answered Oz, "but there is another way to make it float, which is to fill it with hot air. Hot air isn't as good as gas, for if the air should get cold, the balloon would come down in the desert, and should be lost." "We?" exclaimed the girl. "Are you going with me?" "Yes, of course," replied Oz. "I am tired of being such a humbug. If I should go out of this palace, my people would soon discover I am not a wizard, and then they would be vexed with me for having deceived them. So I have to stay shut up in these rooms all day, and it gets tiresome. I'd much rather go back to Kansas with you and be in a circus again." "I shall be glad to have your company," said Dorothy. "Thank you," he answered. "Now, if you will help me sew the silk together, we will begin work on our balloon." Oh, thank you, Milton. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Welcome, welcome. So Dorothy took a needle and thread, and as fast as Oz cut the strips of silk into proper shape, the girl sewed them neatly together. First there was a strip of light green silk, then a strip of dark green, and then a strip of emerald green. For Oz had a fancy to make the balloon in different shades of color about them. It took 3 days to sew all the strips together, but when it was finished, they had a big bag of green silk more than 20 feet long. Then Oz painted it on the side with a coat of thin glue to make it airtight, after which he announced that the balloon was ready. "But we must have a basket to ride in," he said. So he sent the soldier with the green whiskers for a big clothes basket, which he fastened with many ropes to the bottom of the balloon. When it was all ready, Oz sent word to his people, that he was going to make a visit to a great brother wizard who lived in the clouds. The news spread rapidly throughout the city, and everyone came to see the wonderful sight. Oz ordered the balloon carried out in front of the palace, and the people gazed upon it with much curiosity. The Tin Woodman had chopped a big pile of wood, and now he made a fire of it, and Oz held the bottom of the balloon over the fire so that the hot air rose from it. Wow, I'm going to start that sentence over again. The Tin Woodman had chopped a big pile of wood, and now he made a fire of it, and Oz held the bottom of the balloon over the fire so that the hot air that arose from it would be caught by the silken bag. Gradually the balloon swelled out and rose into the air until finally the basket just touched the ground. Then Oz got into the basket and said to all the people in a loud voice, "I am now going away to make a visit. While I am gone, the Scarecrow will rule over you. I command you to obey him as you would me." The balloon was by this time tugging hard at the rope that held it to the ground, for the air within it was hot, and this made it so much lighter in weight than the air. Without that... Oh boy, these sentences are pretty difficult. The balloon was by this time tugging hard at the rope that held it to the ground, for the air within it was hot, and this made it so much lighter in weight than the air without it that it pulled hard to rise into the sky. Oh boy. Sorry about that. That was a doozy of a sentence, Mr. Baum. "Come, Dorothy," cried the wizard. "Hurry up or the balloon will fly away." "I can't find Toto anywhere," replied Dorothy, who did not wish to leave her little dog behind. Toto had run into the crowd to bark at a kitten, and Dorothy at last found him. She picked him up and ran towards the balloon. She was within a few steps of it, and Oz was holding out his hands to help her into the basket when crack went the ropes, and the balloon rose into the air without her. "Come back," she screamed. "I want to go too." "I can't come back, my dear," called Oz from the basket. "Goodbye." "Goodbye," shouted everyone, and all eyes were turned upward to where the wizard was riding in the basket, rising every moment farther and farther into the sky. And that was the last any of them ever saw of Oz, the wonderful wizard, though he may have reached Omaha safely, and be there now, for all we know. But the people remembered him lovingly, and said to one another, "Oz was always our friend. When he was here, he built for us a beautiful emerald city, and now he is gone. He has left the wise Scarecrow to rule over us." Still, for many days they grieved over the loss of the wonderful wizard, and would not be comforted. Oz has flown away. Man, oh man, some of these sentences, man, they're so strangely constructed. But that's what you get from early 1900 books. Oh, hello, Bobbert. Welcome to the stream. But yeah, this old English, man. People talked way different back then. But of course, as you can see, or hear, I suppose. But welcome everyone, any new viewers that may have come in. I am Captain Nemo, and I will be your captain for tonight. Yeah, it's very difficult to read at times. It's just these huge run-on sentences with words that are usually at the beginning of the sentence, and then they show up at the end, and conjunctions and verbs are misplaced or different in normal modern-day language. But yeah, if you're enjoying it, stick around. We probably will get through this entire book tonight, and I'll probably start on the next one as well. But If you're comfy, if you're enjoying it, consider giving me a follow. I would very much appreciate it. It helps me out a lot to support the channel. I'll be doing this Tuesdays through Thursdays and Sundays every week from 9 p.m. Central Standard Time to 1 a.m. Central Standard Time. Oh, thank you, little particle, for the follow. I hope you can get some enjoyment from all this and relax. Twitch is full of hype. Sometimes it's good to take a step back and let that high mellow out a little bit. Just, enjoy the peacefulness. Because everyone has to sleep sometime. Unfortunately. I know some people probably wouldn't if they didn't have to, but maybe I can help just a little bit. I hope you will join me quite often, Alan. With one more sip of my tea. Let us continue. Chapter 18. Away to the South. Dorothy wept bitterly at the passing of her hope to get home to Kansas again. But when she thought it was all over, she was glad she had not gone up in the balloon. And she also felt sorry at losing Oz, and so did her companions. The Tin Woodman came to her and said, "Truly, I should be ungrateful if I failed to mourn them for the man who gave me my lovely heart. I should like to cry a little because Oz is gone. If you will kindly wipe away my tears, so I shall not rust." "With pleasure," she answered, and brought a towel at once. Then the Tin Woodman wept for several minutes, and she watched the tears carefully, and wiped them away with the towel. When she had finished, he thanked her kindly, and oiled himself thoroughly with his jeweled oil can, to guard against mishap. The Scarecrow was now the ruler of the Emerald City, and although he was not a wizard, the people were proud of him. For, they said, there is not another city in all the world that is ruled by a stuffed man. And so, as far as they knew, they were right. The morning after the balloon had gone up with Oz, the 4 travelers met in the throne room and talked matters over. The Scarecrow sat in the big throne, and the others stood respectfully before him. "We are not so unlucky," said the new ruler, "for this palace and the Emerald City belong to us, and we can do just as we please. When I remember that a short time ago I was up on a pole in a farmer's cornfield, and that now I am the ruler of this beautiful city, I am quite satisfied with my lot." "I also," said the Tin Woodman, "am well pleased with my new heart, and really, that was the only thing I wished in all the world." "For my part, I am content in knowing I am as brave as any beast that ever lived, if not braver," said the Lion modestly. "If Dorothy would only be contented to live in the Emerald City," continued the Scarecrow, "we might all be happy together." "But I don't want to live here," cried Dorothy. "I want to go to Kansas and live with Aunt Em and Uncle Henry." "Well then, that's the Woodman. "Well then, what can be done?" inquired the Woodman. The Scarecrow decided to think, and he thought so hard that the pins and needles began to stick out of his brains. Finally, he said, "Why not call the winged monkeys and ask them to carry over the desert?" "I never thought of that," said Dorothy joyfully. "It's just the thing. I'll go at once for the golden cap." When she brought it into the throne room, she spoke the magic words, and soon the band of winged monkeys flew in through the open window and stood beside her. "This is the second time you have called us," said the Monkey King, bowing before the little girl. "What do you wish?" I want you to fly me to Kansas, said Dorothy. But the Monkey King shook his head. That cannot be done, he said. We belong to this country alone, and cannot leave it. There has never been a winged monkey in Kansas yet, and I suppose there never will be, for they don't belong there. We shall be glad to serve you in any way with our power, but we cannot cross the desert. Goodbye. And with another and with another bow, the Monkey King spread his wings and flew away through the window, followed by all his band. Dorothy was ready to cry with disappointment. I have wasted the charm of the golden cap to no purpose, she said, for the winged monkeys cannot help me. It is certainly too bad, said the tender-hearted woodman. The Scarecrow was thinking again, and his head bulged out so horribly that Dorothy feared it was burst. Let us call in the soldier with the green whiskers, he said, and ask his advice. So the soldier was summoned and entered the throne room timidly, for while Oz was alive, he was never allowed to come farther than the door. This little girl, said the Scarecrow to the soldier, wishes to cross the desert. How can she do it? I cannot tell, answered the soldier, for nobody has ever crossed the desert, unless it is Oz himself. Is there no one who can help me? Asked Dorothy earnestly. Glinda might, he suggested. Who is Glinda? Inquired the Scarecrow. The Witch of the South. She is the most powerful of all the witches, and rules over the Quadlings. Besides, her castle stands on the edge of the desert, so she may know a way to cross it. Glinda is a good witch, isn't she? Asked the child. The Quadlings think she is good, said the soldier, and she is kind to everyone. I have heard that Glinda is a beautiful woman, who knows how to keep young in spite of the many years she has lived. How can I get to her castle? Asked Dorothy. The road is straight to the south, he answered, but it is said to be full of dangers to travelers. There are wild beasts in the country. There are wild beasts in the woods, and a race of queer men who do not like strangers to cross their country. For this reason, none of the Quadlings had ever come to the Emerald City. The soldier then left them, and the Scarecrow said, It seems, in spite of these dangers, the best thing Dorothy can do is to travel to the land of the South and ask Glinda to help her. For, of course, if Dorothy stays here, she will never get back to Kansas. You must have been thinking again, remarked the Tin Woodman. I have, said the Scarecrow. I shall go with Dorothy, declared the Lion, for I am tired of your city, and long for the woods and the country again. I am really a wild beast, you know. Besides, Dorothy will need someone to protect her. That is true, agreed the Woodman. My axe may be of service to her, so I also will go with her to the land of the South. When shall we start? Asked the Scarecrow. Are you going? They asked in surprise. Certainly. If it wasn't for Dorothy, I should never have had brains. She lifted me from the pole in the cornfield and brought me to the Emerald City. So my good luck is all due to her, and I shall never leave her until she starts back to Kansas for good and all. Thank you, said Dorothy gratefully. You're all very kind to me, but I should like to start as soon as possible. We shall go tomorrow morning, returned the Scarecrow. So now, let us all get ready, for it will be a long journey. Yeah, you know. There's no stuffed men in Power or anything. Keeping monies for themselves and stuffing themselves with it, that's fine. There's no scarecrows. Oh, I should take my break real quick. It is a little past my time, even though I did have some trouble earlier trying to go live. Spent 15 minutes because OBS was like, no, we're not gonna put you online for some reason. But anyway, it is time, since it is the top of the hour, a little past the top of the hour, I'll take a 3-minute break to stand up and stretch and go refill my tea. So I will be back momentarily. return with my delicious cup of tea. Thank you. Yeah, I wonder what that farmer would... I'm sure the farmer has heard about it. It's like, there's a scarecrow in the throne room? I'm missing a scarecrow. Thank you, guys. All right. How are you guys feeling tonight? Still doing well? That's good. We like chill here. Chill's a very good state to be in. Yeah, I still can't get past 725 on Kingdoms. Gotta switch up my team a little bit for that. But yeah, welcome. If there are any new viewers in, I hope you enjoy your stay and enjoy listening to this silly little book called The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Genshin. I should try that sometime again. I only played for like 30 minutes and I was like, I have other things I need to play right now. And I'll give it another try eventually. Yeah. All right. Chapter 19. Attacked by the Fighting Trees. The next morning, Dorothy kissed the pretty green girl goodbye, and they all shook hands with the soldiers with the green whiskers, who had walked them as far as the gate. When the guardian of the gate saw them again, he wondered greatly that they could leave the beautiful city to get into new trouble. But he at once unlocked their spectacles, which he put them back into the green box, and gave them many good wishes to carry with them. "You are now our ruler," he said to the Scarecrow, "so you must come back to us as soon as possible." "I certainly shall if I am able," the Scarecrow replied, "but I must help Dorothy get home first." As Dorothy bade the good-natured guardian a last farewell, she said, "I have been very kindly treated by your lovely city, and everyone has been good to me. I cannot tell you how grateful I am." "Don't try, my dear," he answered. "We should like to keep you with us, but if it is your wish to return to Kansas, I hope you will find a way." He then opened the gate of the outer wall, and they walked forth and started upon their journey. The sun shone brightly as our friends turned their faces toward the land of the south. They were all in the best of spirits, and laughed and chatted together. Dorothy was once more filled with hope of getting home, and Scarecrow and Tin Minman were glad to be of use to her. As for the lion, he sniffed the fresh air with delight and whisked his tail from side to side in pure joy at being in the country again, while Toto ran around them and chased the moths and butterflies, barking merrily all the time. "City life does not agree with me at all," remarked the lion, as they walked along at a brisk pace. "I have lost much flesh since I lived there, and now I am anxious for a chance to show the other beasts how courageous I have grown." They now turned and took a last look at the Emerald City. All they could see was a mass of towers and steeples behind the green walls. And high above everything, the spires and dome of the Palace of Oz. Oz was not such a bad wizard after all, said the Tin Woodman, as he felt his heart rattling around in his breast. He knew how to give me brains, and very good brains too, said the Scarecrow. If Oz had taken a dose of the same courage he gave me, added the Lion, he would have been a brave man. Dorothy said nothing. Oz had not kept the promise he made to her, but he had done his best, so she forgave him. As he said, he was a good man, even if he was a bad wizard. The first day's journey was through the green fields and bright flowers that stretched about the Emerald City on every side. They slept that night on the green grass, with nothing but the stars over them, and they rested very well indeed. In the morning, they traveled on until they came to a thick wood. There was no way of going around it, for it seemed to extend to the right and left as far as they could see. And besides, they did not dare to change direction of their journey for fear of getting lost. So they looked for the place where it would be easiest to get into the forest. The Scarecrow, who was in the lead, finally discovered a big tree with such wide-spreading branches that there was room for the party to pass underneath. So he walked forward to the tree, but just as he came under the first branches, they bent down and twined around him, and the next minute he was raised from the ground and flung headlong among the travelers. This did not hurt the Scarecrow, but it did surprise him, and he looked rather dizzy when Dorothy picked him up. Here's another space between the trees, called the Lion. Let me try it first, said the Scarecrow, for it doesn't hurt me to get thrown about. He walked up to another tree. As he spoke, but its branches immediately seized him and tossed him back again. This is strange, exclaimed Dorothy. What shall we do? The trees seem to have made up their minds to fight us, and to stop our journey, remarked the Lion. I believe I will try it myself, said the Tin Woodman, and shouldering his axe, marched up to the first tree and handled the Scarecrow so roughly. He marched up to the first tree that handled the Scarecrow so roughly. When a big branch bent down to seize him, the Woodman chopped at it so fiercely that it cut in two. At once the tree began shaking all its branches as if in pain, and the Tin Woodman passed safely under it. Come on, he shouted to the others. Be quick. They all ran forward and passed under the tree without injury, except Toto, who was caught by a small branch and shaken until he howled. But the Woodman promptly chopped off the branch and set the little dog free. The other trees of the forest did nothing to keep them back, so they made up their minds that only the first row of trees could have bent down their branches, and that probably these trees were policemen of the forest, and given this wonderful power in order to keep strangers out of it. 4 travelers walked with ease through the trees until they came to the farther edge of the wood. Then, to their surprise, they found before them a high wall which seemed to be made of white china. It was smooth, like the surface of a dish, and higher than their heads. What shall we do now? Asked Dorothy. I will make a ladder, said the Tin Woodman, or we must certainly climb over the wall. Good times, good times. How would you like if someone came up and picked something off of you? They say. The movie was fun. I enjoyed the Wizard of Oz movie. They kept a few elements, but yeah, the cops' trees are gonna get them. Policeman is such a weird word to use there. Probably use like guardian or something. Like, it wasn't just 2 police in the forest, they were the policemen of the forest. Tree cops. What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad shrubs, bad shrubs. Chapter 20. The Dainty China Country. While the woodman was making oh boy, let's start off that a bit differently. While the woodman was making a ladder from the wood which he found in the forest, Dorothy lay down and slept, for she was tired of the long walk. The lion also curled himself up to sleep, and Toto laid beside him. The Scarecrow watched the woodman while he worked, and said to him, "I cannot think of why this wall is here, nor what it is made of." "Rest your brains and do not worry about the wall," replied the woodman. "When we have climbed over it, we shall know what is on the other side." After a time, the ladder was finished. It looked clumsy, but the Tin Woodman was sure it was strong enough. It was sure it was strong and would answer their purpose. The Scarecrow waked to Dorothy and the lion and Toto, and told them that the ladder was ready. The Scarecrow climbed up the ladder first, but he was so awkward that Dorothy had to follow close behind him and keep him from falling off. When he got his head over the top of the wall, the Scarecrow said, "Oh my!" "Go on," exclaimed Dorothy. So the Scarecrow climbed farther up and sat down on the top of the wall, and Dorothy put her head over and cried, "Oh my!" just as the Scarecrow had done. Then Toto came up, and immediately began to bark, but Dorothy made him be still. The lion climbed the ladder next, and the Tin Woodman came last, but both of them cried, "Oh my!" as soon as they looked over the wall. When they were all sitting in a row on top of the wall, they looked down and saw a strange sight. Before them was a great stretch of country, having the floor as smooth and shining and white as the bottom of a big platter. Scattered around were many houses made entirely of china and painted in the brightest colors. These houses were quite small, the biggest of them reaching only as high as Dorothy's waist. There were also pretty little barns with china fences around them, and many cows and sheep and horses and pigs and chickens, all made of china, were standing about in groups. But the strangest of all were the people who lived in the queer country. There were little milkmaids and shepherdesses with brightly colored bodices and golden spots all over their gowns, and princesses with most gorgeous frocks of silver and gold and purple, and shepherds dressed in knee breeches with pink and yellow and blue stripes down them, and golden buckles on their shoes, and princes with jeweled crowns upon their heads, wearing ermine robes, and satin doublets, and funny clowns in ruffed gowns, with round red spots upon their cheeks and tall pointed caps. And, strangest of all, these people were all made of china, even to their clothes, and were so small that the tallest of them was no higher than Dorothy's knee. No one did so much as look at the travelers at first, except one little purple china dog with an extra-large head, which came to the wall and barked at them with a tiny voice, afterwards running away again. "How shall we get down?" asked Dorothy. They found the ladder was so heavy they could not pull it up, so that the Scarecrow fell off the wall and the others jumped down upon him, so that the hard floor would not hurt their feet. Of course, they took pains not to light on his head and get the pins in their feet. When all were safely down, they picked up the Scarecrow, whose body was quite flattened out, and patted his straw into shape again. "We must cross this place in order to get to the other side," said Dorothy, "for it would be unwise for us to go any other way except due south." They began walking through the country of the China people, and the first thing they came to was a China milkmaid milking a China cow. As they drew near, the cow suddenly gave a kick and kicked over the stool, the pail, and even the milkmaid herself, and all fell on the China ground with a great clatter. Dorothy was shocked to see that the cow had broken her leg off, and that the pail was lying in several small pieces, while the poor milkmaid had a nick in her left elbow. "There!" cried the milkmaid angrily. "See what you have done! My cow has broken her leg, and I must take her to the mender's shop and have it glued on again. What do you mean by coming here and frightening my cow?" "I am very sorry," returned Dorothy. "Please forgive us." But the pretty milkmaid was much too vexed to make any answer. She picked up the leg sulkily and led her cow away, the poor animal limping on 3 legs. As she left them, the milkmaid cast many reproachful glances over her shoulder at the clumsy strangers, holding her nicked elbow close to her side. Dorothy was quite grieved at this mishap. "We must be very careful here," said the kind-hearted woodman, "or we may hurt these little people so they will never get over it." A little farther on, Dorothy met a most beautifully dressed young princess, who stopped short as she saw the strangers and started to run away. Dorothy wanted to see more of the princess, so she ran after her. But the China girl called out, "Don't chase me! Don't chase me!" She had such a frightened little voice that Dorothy stopped and said, "Why not?" "Because," answered the princess, also stopping a safe distance away, "if I run, I may fall down and break myself." "But you could not be mended?" asked the girl. "Oh yes, but one is never so pretty after being mended, you know," replied the princess. "I suppose not," said Dorothy. Oops, did that go through? Sorry about that. "Now there is Mr. Joker, one of our clowns," continued the China lady, "who is always trying to stand upon his head. He has broken himself so often that he is mended in 100 pieces, and doesn't look at all pretty. Here he comes now, so you can see for yourself." Indeed, a jolly little clown came walking toward them, and Dorothy could see that, in spite of his pretty clothes of red and yellow and green, he was completely covered with cracks, running every which way, and showing plainly that he had been mended in many places. Well, I think someone didn't know what a dog was. I can't quite remember. I guess maybe it was the Munchkins didn't know what the dog was. I don't remember, actually. Yeah, Dorothy is a very confused little girl. Like, why can't I chase you? Very interesting. She is a farm girl, though. She probably didn't have very much, education over there on the Kansas prairies of gray. The clown put his hands in his pocket, and after puffing out his cheeks and nodding his head at them saucily, he said, "My fair lady, why do you stare at poor old Mr. Joker? You're quite as stiff and prim as if you'd eaten up a poker." "Be quiet, sir," said the princess. "Can't you see these are strangers and should be treated with respect?" "Well, that's respect, I expect," declared the clown, and immediately stood upon his head. "Don't mind Mr. Joker," said the princess to Dorothy. "He is considerably cracked in his head, and that makes him foolish." "Oh, I don't mind him a bit," said Dorothy. "But you are so beautiful," she continued, "that I am sure I could love you dearly. Won't you let me carry you back to Kansas and stand you on Aunt Hem's mantle? I could carry you in my basket." "That would make me very unhappy," answered the China princess. "You see, here in our country we live contentedly, and can talk and move around as we please. But whenever any of us are taken away, Our joints at once stiffen, and we can only stand straight and look pretty. Of course, that is all expected of us when we are put on mantels and cabinets and drawing room tables, but our lives are much pleasanter here in our own country. I would not make you unhappy for the world, exclaimed Dorothy, so I'll just say goodbye. Goodbye, replied the princess. They walked carefully through the China country. The little animals and all the people scampered out of their way, fearing the strangers would break them. And after an hour or so, the travelers reached the other side of the country and came to another China wall. It was not so high as the first, however, and by standing upon the lion's back, they all managed to scramble to the top. Then the lion gathered his legs under him and jumped on the wall, and jumped on the wall. But just as he jumped, he upset a china church with its tail and smashed it all to pieces. That was too bad, said Dorothy. But really, I think we were lucky at not doing these little people more harm than breaking a cow's leg and a church. They are all so brittle. They are indeed, said the Scarecrow. And I am thankful I am made of straw. I am made of straw and cannot be easily damaged. There are worse things in the world than being a scarecrow. Oh boy. Dorothy wanting to kidnap. Oh, Dorothy. I want to take this living thing and put it on my aunt's display case. Good old Dorothy. But yes, welcome, welcome, one and all. I hope you guys are still enjoying it. I hope you're relaxed and comfy and enjoying yourself. Just taking a few sips of tea between chapters. If you are enjoying it, please consider throwing a follow. It's a little button in the top right corner. I'd very much appreciate it. But if not, that's fine too. Thank you for joining me nonetheless. I hope you're enjoying it. We're almost at the end. We only have 16% of the book left. That means we'll be moving on to, I believe it is The Marvelous Something of Oz. Can't quite remember. I will finish them. But yeah, I hope you guys are having a good night. And I hope you are settled and ready to continue. In Dorothy's crime spree, this farm girl has gone too far. Yeah, it's a long book, like, surprisingly. I say long, but I mean, it's long for a child's book anyway, at least in the early 1900s. But they changed a lot in the movie too. Like they kept a few things, of course, but there were a lot of things left out. But back then it was hard to make a movie. So I mean, it's still kind of hard to make a movie, but back then it was worse. It just got Technicolor for the Wizard of Oz movie. So that was interesting. Chapter 21. The Lion Becomes the King of Beasts. After climbing down from the China Wall, the travelers found themselves in a disagreeable country, full of bogs and marshes and covered with tall, rank grass. It was difficult to walk without falling into the muddy holes, for the grass was so thick that it hid them from sight. However, by carefully picking their way, they got safely along until they reached solid ground. But here, the country seemed wilder than ever, and after a long and tiresome walk through the underbrush, they entered another forest, where the trees were bigger and older than any they had ever seen.
"This forest is perfectly delightful,"
declared the lion, looking around him with joy.
"Never have I seen a more beautiful place."
"It seems gloomy," said the scarecrow.
"Not a bit of it," answered the lion.
I should like to live here all my life."
"See how soft the dried leaves are under your feet, and how rich the green the moss is that clings to these old trees. Surely no wild beast could wish a pleasanter home."
"Perhaps there are wild beasts in the forest now," said Dorothy.
"I suppose there are," returned the lion, "but I do not see any of them about."
They walked through the forest until it became too dark to go any farther. Dorothy and Toto and the lion lay down to sleep, while the woodman and the scarecrow kept watch over them as usual. When morning came, they started again. Before they had gone far, they heard a low rumble, as of the growling of many wild animals. Toto whimpered a little, but none of the others were frightened, and they kept along the well-trodden path until they came to an opening in the wood, in which were gathered hundreds of beasts of every variety. There were tigers and elephants and bears and wolves and foxes and all the others in the natural history, and for a moment Dorothy was afraid. But the lion explained that the animals were holding a meeting, and he judged by the snarling and growling that they were in great trouble. As he spoke, several of the beasts caught sight of him, and at once the great assemblage hushed as if by magic. The biggest of the tigers came up to the lion and bowed, saying,
"Welcome, O King of Beasts.
You have come in good time to fight our enemy and bring peace to all the animals of the forest once more."
"What is your trouble?"
asked the lion quietly. "We are all threatened," answered the tiger, "by a fierce enemy which has lately come into the forest. It is a most tremendous monster, like a great spider, with a great body as big as an elephant and legs as long as a tree trunk. It has 8 of these long legs, and the monster crawls through the forest. He seizes an animal with a leg. Let me try that one more time. It has 8 of these long legs, and as the monster crawls through the forest, he seizes an animal with a leg and drags it to its mouth, where he eats it. My God, where he eats it as a spider does a fly. Not one of us is safe while this fierce creature is alive, and we had called a meeting to decide how to take care of ourselves when you came among us." The lion thought for a moment.
"Are there any other lions in this forest?"
he asked. "No, there were some, but the monster has eaten them all. And besides, there were none of them nearly so large and brave as you."
"If I put an end to your enemy, will you bow down to me and obey me as king of the forest?"
inquired the lion. "Well, he will do that gladly," returned the tiger, and all of the other beasts roared with a mighty roar. "We will!"
"Where is this great spider of yours now?"
asked the lion.
"Yonder,
among the oak trees," said the tiger, pointing with his forefoot.
"Take good care of these friends of mine," said the lion, "and I will go at once to fight this monster."
He bade his comrades goodbye and marched proudly away to do battle with the enemy. The great spider was lying asleep when the lion found him, and it looked so ugly that its foe turned up his nose in disgust. Its legs were quite as long as the tiger had said, and its body covered with coarse black hair. It had a great mouth, with a row of sharp teeth, a foot long, but his head was joined to the pudgy body by a neck as slender as a wasp's waist. This gave the lion a hint of the best way to attack the creature, and as he knew it was easier to fight asleep than awake, he gave a great spring and landed directly on the monster's back. Then, with one blow of his heavy paw, all armed with sharp claws, he knocked the spider's head from its body. Jumping down, he watched it until the long legs stopped wiggling, when he knew that it was quite dead. The lion went back to the opening where the beasts of the forest were waiting for him and said proudly,
"You need fear your enemy no longer."
Then the beasts bowed down to the lion as their king, and he promised to come back and rule over them as soon as Dorothy was safely on her way to Kansas. Well, that was an easy kingdom to grab, I suppose. Yeah, they should definitely drop the house on that. But, who's to say if the witch wasn't more powerful? But yes, big spiders are quite gross. 8 silver shoes. Alright. Chapter 22. The Country of the Quadlings. The 4 travelers passed through the rest of the forest in safety, and when they came out from its gloom, saw before them a steep hill covered from top to bottom with great pieces of rock. "That will be a hard climb," said the Scarecrow, "but we must get over the hill. But we must get over the hill nevertheless." So he led the way and the others followed. They had nearly reached the first rock when they heard a rough voice call out, "Keep back!" "Who are you?" asked the Scarecrow. Then a head showed itself over the rock, and the same voice said, "This hill belongs to us, and we don't allow anyone to cross it." "But we must cross it," said the Scarecrow. "We're going to the country of the Quadlings." "But you shall not," replied the voice, and there stepped from behind the rock a strange man, the strangest man that the travelers had ever seen. He was quite short and stout, and had a big head, which was flat at the top, and supported by a thick neck full of wrinkles. But he had no arms at all, and seeing this, the Scarecrow did not fear that so helpless a creature could prevent them from climbing the hill. So he said, "I'm sorry not to do as you wish, but we must pass over your hill whether you like it or not." And he walked boldly forward. As quick as lightning, the man's head shot forward, and his neck stretched out until the top of his head, where it was flat, struck the Scarecrow in the middle, and sent him tumbling over and over, down the hill. Almost as quickly as it came, the head went back to his body, and the man laughed harshly and said, "It isn't as easy as you think." A chorus of boisterous laughter came from the other rocks, and Dorothy saw hundreds of the armless hammerheads upon the hillside, one behind every rock. The lion became quite angry at the laughter caused by the Scarecrow's mishap, and giving a loud roar that echoed like thunder, he dashed up the hill. Again a head shot swiftly out, and the great lion went rolling down the hill as if he had been struck by a cannonball. Dorothy ran down and helped the Scarecrow to his feet, and the lion came up to her, feeling rather bruised and sore, and said, "It is useless.
to fight people with soothing heads. Oh, wait, is Dorothy saying this? Oh yeah, no, that was the line. It is useless to fight the people with shooting heads. No one can withstand them.
What can we do then? She asked. Call the winged monkeys, suggested the Tin Woodman. You still have the right to command them once more. Very well, she answered, and putting on the golden cap, she uttered the magic words. The monkeys were prompt as ever, and in a few moments the entire band stood before her.
What are your commands?
Inquired the king of the monkeys, bowing low. Carry us over the hill to the country of the Quadlings, answered the girl.
It shall be done, said the king, and at once the winged monkeys caught the 4 travelers and Toto up in their arms and flew away with them.
As they passed over the hill of hammerheads, they yelled with vexation and shot their heads high in the air, but they could not reach the winged monkeys, which carried Dorothy and her comrades safely over the hill and set them down in the beautiful country of the Quadlings. And thanks for the follow, DH Anthony fans. Hope you are enjoying. It shall be done, said the king. And at once the winged monkeys caught the 4 travelers. Wait, I read that already. My apologies. This is the last you can summon us, said the leader to Dorothy. So goodbye, and good luck to you. Goodbye, and thank you very much, returned the girl. And the monkeys rose up into the air and were out of sight in a twinkling. The country of the Quadlings seemed rich and happy. There was field upon field of ripening grain, with well-paved roads running between them, and pretty rippling brooks with strong bridges across them. The fences and houses and bridges were all painted bright red, just as they had been painted yellow in the country of the Winkies and blue in the country of the Munchkins. The Quadlings themselves, who were short and fat and looked chubby and good-natured, were all dressed in red, which showed bright against the green grass and the yellowing grain. The monkeys had set them down near a farmhouse, and the 4 travelers walked up to it and knocked on the door. It was opened by the farmer's wife, and when Dorothy asked for something to eat, the woman gave them all a good dinner, with 3 kinds of cake and 4 kinds of cookies, and a bowl of milk for Toto. How far is it to the castle of Glinda? Asked the child. It's not a great way, answered the farmer's wife. Take the road to the south, and you will soon reach it. Thanking the good woman, they started afresh and walked by the fields and across the pretty bridges until they saw before them a very beautiful castle. Before the gates were 3 young girls dressed in handsome red uniforms trimmed with gold braid. And as Dorothy approached, one of them said to her, Why have you come to the South Country? To see the good witch who rules here, she answered. Will you take me to her? Let me have your name, and I will ask Glinda if she will receive you. They told who they were, and the girl soldier went into the castle. After a few moments, she came back to say that Dorothy and the others were to be admitted at once. Yeah. I don't think the Wicked Witch displayed any, spell casting at all to begin with, besides the controlling of the animals that were brutally murdered by Dorothy and company. That's true. She did have sponsorship from the Winkies. I wonder how she enslaved them. I guess that was also a spell or a charm. Maybe she frightened them too badly. I don't know. can't. Did she cast a spell? I don't think she cast any spells. We saw the Witch of the North gave Dorothy a defense charm from her kiss or whatever. Oh yeah, she did. She did charm the Woodman's axe. Oh no, that was the East. That was the East Witch that did that because he was trying to marry someone there. I don't know. Oh yeah, she made the iron block invisible. Or the iron ingot, or whatever it was. That's some interesting magic, I guess. I'm gonna make this block invisible and make her trip. Very evil. Because all of the things that she did, she had the golden cap, which she commanded the monkeys, but the magic was in the cap rather than her. And the silver shoes she tried to get, which were also a magical item and not magic herself. Very interesting. Very interesting, L. Frank Baum. What are you doing? Alright. Chapter 23. Glinda the Good Witch grants Dorothy's wish. Before they went to see Glinda, however, they were taken to a room of the castle where Dorothy washed her face and combed her hair, and the lion shook the dust out of his mane, and the scarecrow patted himself into the best shape, and the woodman polished his tin and oiled his joints. That was one sentence. Come on. What are you doing, Elfrey Baum? When they were all quite presentable, they followed the soldier girl into a big room where the witch Glinda sat upon a throne of rubies. She was both beautiful and young to their eyes. Her hair was a rich red in color and fell in flowing ringlets over her shoulders. Her dress was pure white, but her eyes were blue, and they looked kindly upon the little girl. "What can I do for you, my child?" she asked. Dorothy told the witch all her story, how the cyclone had brought her to the land of Oz, how she had found her companions, and of the wonderful adventures they had met with. "My greatest wish now," she added, "is to get back to Kansas, for Aunt Em will surely think something dreadful has happened to me, and that will make her put on mourning. And unless the crops are better this year than they were the last, I am sure Uncle Henry cannot afford it." That's a term back then. Put on mourning. Good old English. Glinda leaned forward and kissed the sweet, upturned face of the lovely little girl. "Bless your heart," she said. "I am sure I can tell you of a way to get back to Kansas." Then she added, "But if I do, you must give me the golden cap." "Willingly," exclaimed Dorothy. "Indeed, it is of no use to me now. And when you have it, you can command the winged monkeys 3 times." "And I think I shall need their services just those 3 times," answered Glinda, smiling. Dorothy then gave her the golden cap, and the witch said to the scarecrow, "What will you do when Dorothy has left us?" "I will return to the Emerald City," he replied, "for Oz has made me its ruler, and the people like me. The only thing that worries me is how to cross the Hill of Hammerheads." By means of the golden cap, I shall command the winged monkeys to carry you to the gates of the Emerald City, said Glinda. For it would be a shame to deprive you, the people, of so wonderful a ruler.
Am I really wonderful? Asked the Scarecrow.
You are unusual, replied Glinda. Turning to the woodman, she asked, What will become of you when Dorothy leaves this country? He leaned on his axe and thought for a moment. His axe, I did not say axe. He leaned on his axe and thought for a moment. Then he said, The Winkies were very kind to me, and wanted me to rule over them after the Wicked Witch died. I am fond of the Winkies, and if I could go back again to the country of the West, I should like nothing more better than to rule over them forever. My second command to the Wicked Monkeys, said Glinda, will be that they carry you safely to the land of the Winkies. Your brain may not be so large to look at as those of the Scarecrow, but you are really brighter than he is. And you are well polished, and I am sure you will rule the Winkies wisely and well. Feels like that's kind of rude there, Glinda. the Scarecrow, I'm right here. Then the witch looked at the big, shaggy lion and asked, When Dorothy has returned to her home, what will become of you?
Over the hill of the Hammerheads, he answered, lies a grand old forest, and all the beasts that live there have made me their king. If I could only get back to this forest, I would pass my life very happily there.
My third command to the Wicked Monkeys, said Glinda, shall be to carry you to your forest. Then, having used up the powers of the golden cap, I shall give it to the King of the Monkeys, that he and his band may thereafter be free forevermore. The Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman and the Lion now thanked the Good Witch earnestly for her kindness, and Dorothy exclaimed, You are certainly as good as you are beautiful, but you have not yet told me how to get back to Kansas. Your silver shoes will carry you over the desert, replied Glinda. If you had known their power, you could have gone back to your Aunt Em the very first day you came to this country.
But then I should not have had my wonderful brains, cried the Scarecrow. I might have passed my whole life in the farmer's cornfield.
And I should not have had my lovely heart, said the Tin Woodman. I might have stood and rusted in the forest till the end of the world.
And I should have lived a coward forever, declared the Lion, and no beast in all the forest would have had a good word to say to me.
This is all true, said Dorothy, and I am glad I was of use to these good friends. But now that each of them has had what he most desired, and each is happy in having a kingdom to rule besides, I think I should like to go back to Kansas. Whew, another doozy of a sentence, that's for sure. The silver shoes, said the Good Witch, have wonderful powers. And one of the most curious things about them is that they can carry you to any place in the world in 3 steps, and each step will be made in the wink of an eye. All you have to do is to knock the heels together 3 times, and command the shoes to carry you wherever you wish to go. If that is so, said the child joyfully, I will ask them to carry me back to Kansas at once. She threw her arms around the lion's neck and kissed him, patting his big head tenderly. Then she kissed the Tin Woodman, who was weeping in a way most dangerous to his joints. But she hugged the soft, stuffed body of the Scarecrow in her arms instead of kissing his painted face, and found she was crying herself at the sorrowful parting of her loving comrades. Glinda the Good stepped down from her ruby throne to give the little girl a kiss goodbye. A goodbye kiss, and Dorothy thanked her for all the kindness she had shown to her and herself, to her friends and herself. Dorothy now took Toto up solemnly in her arms, and having said one last goodbye, she clapped the heels of her shoes together 3 times, saying, Take me home to Aunt Em. Instantly she was whirling through the air, so swiftly that all she could see or feel was the wind whistling past her ears. The silver shoes took but 3 steps, and then she stopped so suddenly that she rolled over upon the grass several times before she knew where she was. At length, however, she sat up and looked about her. "Good gracious!" she cried, for she was sitting on the broad Kansas prairie, and just before her was the new farmhouse Uncle Henry built after the cyclone had carried away the old one. Uncle Henry was milking the cows in the barnyard, and Toto had jumped out of her arms and was running toward the barn, barking furiously. Dorothy stood up and found she was in her stocking feet, for the silver shoes had fallen off in her flight through the air and were lost forever in the desert. Chapter 24. Home Again. Aunt Em had just come out of the house to water the cabbages when she looked up and saw Dorothy running toward her. "My darling child," she cried, folding the little girl in her arms and covering her face with kisses. "Where in the world did you come from?" "From the land of Oz," said Dorothy gravely, "and here is Toto too. And oh, Aunt Em, I'm so glad to be home again." The end. That's just Project Gutenberg's like rights and stuff. I don't know. But yeah, that's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. A very interesting and curious little book. GG's indeed. Yeah, I don't know why Dorothy was so eager to get back to Gray Prairie, Kansas, where the animals don't talk or help you with anything if they're not trained. Yeah, I mean, of course, Aunt Em and Uncle Henry would be worried about her, but, you know. She should take them with her next time, or something. But there are quite a few books in this series, so who knows what might happen next. Obviously she goes back, but I have no idea how or where she does. So she'd learn to summon a tornado. We Final Fantasy now, boys. Aeroga. Alright, it is top of the hour again, so just in time for another little 3-minute break while I go get some more tea and put up the next book. So give me a moment and I will return in 3 minutes, about 3 minutes. Stick around and we'll read The Marvelous something of Oz. Wait, let me see. The Marvelous Land of Oz. That's what it's called. Alright. Alright, I'll be right back.